back. How are you, Mike?
I'm good.
Thanks for making the drive all the way out to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Thankful for
a lack of fires.
Yeah. For the road crew clearing the brush. It was windy on the way up here.
Yeah, man. I went out and there was just, it looked like somebody had come and done some serious gardening. All the leaves were perfectly pushed away, but then you looked over and there was a bunch of tarps that were ripped in half, and it was like, geez, it must have been crazy up here while I was gone. Well, you're looking at, for those of you listening and watching, especially for those watching, you're looking at the tiny version of Broken City Studios that exists up on the mountaintops of the Himalayas. Julian, California. We have what you call questions, some listener questions out there. Okay, let's start with Nikki's question. What's a good way of overcoming the fear of sharing your artistic work? For me, overcoming the fear is rooted in there's almost like this little cluster of reasons for the fear, like ground zero moments. Like, are you seeking validation? So if you don't get it, you're afraid of how you'll feel, which is an interesting one. Fearing your own feelings about what other people think. Or are you afraid of, being in like imposter syndrome? Are you afraid of like being found out that your work is crap and you're stupid, like catastrophizing the idea of sharing your work and getting a reaction that confirms your worst insecurities about yourself? Or
imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And are you scared of having success and what that means? Because then there's more pressure. Because those are like fear of failure things, but fear of success is very real and often is like a lot deeper and more pernicious and subconscious, maybe. Like what the people that I've met that are afraid of actual success, they're amazing. You do great work with them, and then they get to the point where it really counts, and they actually don't want it. They're afraid of taking it to that next level because they don't really know what the next level is going to look like. So to overcome it, there's a chapter in my book where I talk about it a lot, and I've shared it a lot, but I don't think I've shared it on the podcast, but I call it the circle theory. So like, you've heard me say it, but this is for you, Nikki. I feel like a fulfilling artistic journey is one where you start out and you put 100% commitment into expression. So you have the initial idea or motivation, you work your way through it, you try this, you try that, you're in sort of a creative right brain space, and then you kind of back up a little bit, get logical and kind of look at it, make sure you love it, and go through all those things like you said, like the preparation stuff, and also just giving it your best, and making sure you don't fall victim to things like, wow, I did this syndrome, which I think is huge. When you're creating something from nothing, there's this feeling of, oh my gosh, I made a music song. Like from nothing. Do you even understand? There was no song and now there's a song. It must be the best song ever, because it feels like that when you do it. But you have to sort of that's almost like a happy little childish part of your ego that's so proud of yourself. And then you could find yourself showing people that, and it causes a whole other set of dominoes to fall. But let's say you've gone through that process. That's what I would consider like the expression part. So it's like halfway around the circle of fulfillment. And the other half is the connection half. So that half can be like rooted in connecting to yourself, or having one person dig it and like kind of give you that reaction, like, ooh, whatever you just made is hitting me in a certain spot. And when you feel that, it completes the circle. And the problem is when you have fear rooted in any of those like areas of insecurity or seeking validation or trying to serve your ego or using music to get money or using music to get attention or fear of success, fear of failure, all those things, if that poisons and sort of infiltrates that expression side and you don't stay like really true to what your goal is, your motivation, your intent, I would say is the best word for it, and you keep digging. If you stop, like here's an example. You go through 90% and you've been expressing yourself super honest, and you hit the 90% point, and then you go like, what are my friends going to think? Okay, maybe I should tweak it a little bit because I know they like this and that, and this particular thing is more my thing, but I can't see them digging it. You make little tweaks to the final, like,
It's the lizard brain.
yeah, it's the deepest fear stuff, but it's all connected to very like real things that you're afraid of happening. So you make those tweaks, and it's often just the frosting and the cherry on top that you tweak these things, and then you go out, you share this work. Let's say you do share it with that friend you were thinking about for that last 10%. Then they go, yeah, it's good. You know, you get that half-hearted, almost like the art response of that's equivalent to like a courtesy laugh. You get the courtesy pat on the back or whatever, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have stuck to my guns. So the problem is that now you go back and you make those same. Let's go back at the same scenario. You make the same tweaks, and you try to impress your friend. And then you go and you show the friend, and they're like, oh my gosh, I love it. That's the best thing you've ever done. Oh my gosh, that's great. Oh, you're the best. You're going to be huge and famous. The next time you go to create, that's now poisoned your process, because now you need to remember, okay, what exact compromises did I make on that last 10%? Maybe I should start making them at 50%. And then before you know it, I think it's inevitable that you will start making those compromises from the moment you begin. And then you're lost, your authenticity is lost, the expressionistic intent is poisoned with all this second guessing and all this stuff, and you'll never feel that fulfillment in a really pure way. So I think it's really important to just go all the way through, 100% expressing your truth, whatever that is, show who you want to show, and then when they hear it, you're going to feel, there's this feeling inside like, okay, I did my part. And now it's not about me anymore. It's for them. And people either like it or they don't. It's for them or it's not for them. And you can complete the circle by it being connecting for yourself. Or it might not be too that your audience is your friends. I mean, I've dealt with that a lot in my life, where I have people that I connect to in tons of different ways, but my music just doesn't happen to resonate with them. And it's like, it's been weird for me. And it's helped me look at what my music is and what it isn't, but it's also, there's a loss there. But I've had to really build up thick skin in that area, which it's been honestly difficult, because I love to connect people through my music. And I feel like there's a part of me that is missing in my personality that's there in my music. So if a friend or family member doesn't get it, or respond like I hope they would, there's this feeling of loss. But I've had to just realize that if it's true for me, then somebody's going to dig it who has a similar inner sort of experience as me. And I've had that confirmed in some really cool ways, just from people I don't know, reaching out and being cool enough to like just kind of say something about my work. And those are the moments that are like, so cool. But you mentioned another aspect of it.
I'm just going to comment on what you said. I think your music specifically, sometimes it takes a while to sink in to get the full depth of it. I know that there's a few songs actually that we're trying to use for Broken City percussion this year. That, I mean, I've known about them for a long time, and they never hit me as hard as they've hit me in the last month. Like just really diving in deep and trying to extract all the things that I think will resonate and translate well to the floor. So I think there's an aspect there too, is that sometimes whatever you're creating it's so subtle that it's not something that you're going to get on a first listen or a first viewing.
It's interesting that you say that, because there was a little moment that helped me personally, which was, I think the more specific I dig into a feeling and a thought, and the more true I make it for me, the more specific it is. I already said specific. The more it really becomes music that has to meet somebody else where they're at. And they have to be somewhere in that same psychological, emotional, intellectual realm or experiential, whatever it is, as opposed to, I feel like there's kind of the two polar opposites are music that takes you where it is and music that meets you where you are.
Yeah, or you could even amend the statement of it's not for them yet.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially when I think music is extremely autobiographical and really introspective. And its purpose is to sort of hash out some things inside and make order out of the chaos, and then here it is. If somebody's not in that place, the song is just going to be a song that's maybe feels a little too heavy for right now or whatever. But then it can maybe when you reach that similar kind of space, which is why I always feel like I'm writing songs for people in cars.
I was just going to comment. It's funny you say cars.
Around.
A car is where I have listened to most of your stuff on a first listen, I guess, a first experiencing.
I usually
of
text it to you or something.
Yeah, it's in the car, and that's terrible. It just, maybe this is just my age, but
it's terrible.
I love sitting in the sweet spot of two like beautiful speakers.
You've spent some time on your hi-fi rig. I love the car, but that's a good point.
Yeah. Well,
so you like to have no distractions, nothing you have to do.
Well, I mean, you love the car, probably listening to current projects that you're involved in or whatnot, because I can do that too. I can listen to my own stuff and be like, okay, yeah, I need to tweak that. All right, tweak that. All right, that's good. But when I'm listening to somebody else's stuff,
for the first time.
Yeah. Well, even if it is the first time in a car, at some point I would like to have zero distractions, like phone is off, sitting where I need to be sitting in my living room and just listening. And so to get somebody to do that it's not always going to happen right away. It might not ever happen. And
right.
It's the person creating the work shouldn't be hung up on other people's reaction, I guess, is the moral of the story. Because you can't control all the variables.
Yeah, you got to let go.
And then the other thing I wanted to say about Nikki's question is just moving on to the next project is a good like healer, palate cleanser.
Yeah.
So like you just
leave it in the
rearview mirror, just go and make something else, move on to the next thing, and maybe that thing that you left behind you, maybe it hits later.
Yeah, you know what? And there's a bit of a myth that, I don't know, it's a delicate balance between being somebody who just embraces where you embrace where you are now and you do your best and you finish. You finish it to the best of your ability. Maybe you decide whether or not you're going to share it with the entire world or just your circle of friends. That's a different thing. If you're still in a developmental stage, maybe as an artist or something, you're not ready for the marketplace. And you have to be honest with yourself about that. But embracing the fact that life is just, the classic quote, life is what happens when you're making plans. Life is what happens when you work on one song forever and and don't release anything or whatever it is. Like you said, I think being a finisher, give everything you got and then put a period on that sentence, move on to the next thing. That's growth. Whereas I think it's easy to get into that place where like, no, I want to use this work. I want to grow this until I'm fully formed. Like this is going to be my song that's the ultimate song, or my show that's the ultimate show, or whatever it might be. And that's a fear of failure syndrome, and I've known people that do that, really talented people who are a little bit too withholding or a little bit too perfectionistic to the point where it's like, maybe you don't need to work on that song for more than a year, And it's a bummer too, because it can really, I think more than anything, I'm going to make a pretty bold, broad statement here. But from what I've seen, there's so many talented musicians with something to say. Now, they're not just flying out of the out of doorways everywhere, but there are more than you'd think, maybe on the local level. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen that. Like, oh, I have a friend who's amazing. I don't know why they're not famous or whatever. But one of the things I've seen that's a fatal flaw is some psychological hang up. One little fatal flaw that kind of like prevents them from putting their work out there, or some fatal flaw in the insecurity area, or they try to act like more than they are, or whatever it is. And I'll be honest, I completely had that with my solo music. It meant it's hard to say too much to me, but I think I would say it meant too much to me in some ways, to where I was so concerned with people getting it and getting me that I kind of would strangle the thing that people who were trying to help me, or I don't know. I just got this weird vibe. It felt so personal and revealing, and I didn't want to be rejected, and I hadn't worked that stuff out. But in my career, I was much less personally like attached. I had a partner who shared half the burden of whatever criticism came in or whatever, and that became, I kind of had these two versions of myself that were like placebo, and it was like two testing things. It was like, okay, here's when you care so much that everything has to be exactly perfect, and my life, I feel like my life depends on whether or not somebody likes it or whatever. And then there's this other area, it's like, I do the best I can, and the chips fall where they may. And that's the area where doors tended to fly open more, and I got more, things made more sense. Now, there are other factors. Obviously, my music isn't very super hyper commercial, and a lot of times in my career, I was just doing whatever was there, following the path of least resistance to career. But one of the other things that you mentioned when we had our little technical glitch was the concept of, when you're in a recording situation, you have total control. And time, you have more time at least to like fix things. It's not, here it is. And you got onto a really cool path.
Right. It's not in real time. It'd be like the equivalent of you doing a live show. And then
that's what it was. Okay. So
and then maybe like a guitar cable doesn't work. And so
or your own throat doesn't work.
And you're in a situation where, but you didn't hear it the way it was supposed to be, and that thing went wrong, and I had to take it down an octave because I just, my voice wasn't working that night. You know what I mean? And
stand back, I'm a poison soul. Yeah, dude, that you're hitting on a subject that it's like my nemesis subject, partially because I really love recording. It's the painting of music as opposed to the dancing maybe of music or something. You can just paint over, and you can sculpt it, and then when it feels like it accurately represents what you want to say, you finish it. And live performance is such a different animal. And like you said, what did you say earlier? You said that 90% of the time it's not the intended,
right? And the goal is that
intended final product, I guess.
Yeah, by the time you get to the end of the season, it's the final performances that you're hitting on all cylinders, and that it's within enough of a window of exactly what you intended that it's pretty consistent by that point. But as far as like just leading up to that point, like when the season ends in mid-April. Mm-hmm. Some groups start performing in January. So you've got, January, February, March. You got this building up. It's nowhere near where it's going to be in mid-April. And so to that, if you're not careful, I mean,
that's like releasing the verse and releasing the verse in January and the verse and the chorus in February, or
even worse, it's releasing the whole song, but like
a crappy
the
demo.
Guitar player hasn't tuned, and the drummer is missing a stick.
Eek.
So it's depending on your design process. It could be, completion by chunks, or it could be the whole thing's out there, but it's one dimensional, and you're building dimensions as you go through.
Right.
So regardless, it can be a big blow to the ego if you let it get to you. Like, not every show is going to be perfect. There's going to be, things that go wrong. Power is going to go out, or, somebody's going to trip. And so to keep your head in the right place, especially if you are one of the individuals that's part of the creative process, you need to keep your head clear of all that and not let it affect you. So that's, again, maybe another sort of short answer to the question is just create healthy narratives that work for you. I don't think there's anything physical. There's no physical routine that you can do to get over fear. I think it's
not a physical routine, but I do think it's there's a self-awareness treadmill you can get on that can be part of your thing. Like, just sort of analyzing, what am I operating out of insecurity? Am I operating out of a overwhelming need for validation? Those kind of things can, I think, be really helpful in lowering your fear of showing people music. Is just kind of get that stuff out of the way and just do your best. Give out something honest. Don't pander. Don't be cliche.
I like that. Give out something honest. It's good.
Yeah.
It's almost the defense to those types of fears and feelings.
Well, it's true. It's honest.
Yep.
What else can I do? What do you want? And I think a good little tool that has helped me is, and I may have mentioned it before. I tend to repeat myself like an old senile grandpa, but the idea of low resolution versus high resolution. And, when it comes to creative ideas and how we think about translating what's inside onto, a lyric, a melody, music, whatever it might be that you're doing in music or art, it's easy to phone it in by using a cliche or selling yourself short by not digging deep enough or being as unique as you possibly can. And that's like, if I were to just actually sing I love you in a song, or your smile is like the sunshine, or something that's just been thrown around a million times, that's a pretty low resolution way of saying that now, because it's been overdone. So there better be something pretty amazing happening everywhere else in that song to support that. Or you've set it up with irony, or, there's a famous Natasha Bedingfield song called These Three Words. And I think she decided, I'm going to say I love you in a song so many times that it's actually, unique and quirky. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. That's the song. It's called These Three Words, I love you. So she wrote like the epitome of the tongue-in-cheek I love you song. And that's a cool high resolution way of dealing with something that's sort of low resolution.
Sorry, I'm laughing. I just thought of a joke.
What?
It was a trivia question. When did Paul McCartney write Silly Love Songs? People are sitting there going, 1977, I think, is when that album came out, 77. It's like, no. 1962, 1963, 1964, 1965.
It's been done. And done, and done, and done, and done.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so thinking of it in terms of resolution, like megapixels, like if everything you're doing is like a 1 megapixel picture, it's pretty grainy and not very real, as opposed to like a zillion megapixel would be the ultimate condensed high resolution version of what you want to say. And, it's just a good way. It's helpful for me because it's like a little policeman in your head when you're doing something. It's like, is this as high resolution as I can go? And it's a fun process to go on. Like how dense can you make it with honesty? Let's move on to the second half of her question, because there were multiple parts. This seems a little personal. Let's see here. When are you and Natalie going to do a show? I miss hearing you both live. That's a good question. And every now and then I there's little murmurs and rustlings in the in the bushes about like Natalie wanting to sing again or do something with, the Natures was her project, and with myself, her, and Scott Hara. And whenever she sings, like in the kitchen or something, I'm like, man, I can't believe that's in. I forget sometimes. But yeah, we'll have to force her to do it. And as far as shows, I've sort of broken the ice a little bit on that recently. I sang a song at Concordia University after speaking there. And then after that, Mike asked me to sing this Saturday.
Yeah, this Saturday.
Yeah, so I might be doing that unless I back out and get the flu. Starting to feel a little sick.
Nope.
I'd love to do more of it. And actually, you touched on a subject that hits a nerve. And the reason why I did sing at Concordia was because I didn't want to be a stupid hypocrite. Because I was asked to sing a couple months ago when the speaking engagement was booked, and I said, nah, I'm kind of on hiatus / retirement from live performance because of all the things we talked about. I don't like feeling the loss of things not being at their ultimate level, and I'm just not. It hasn't been my focus, and I feel like I owe it to myself and to whoever's listening to be absolutely on my game to the level that I can achieve, hopefully. And I really hate myself when I don't do that. If I perform and it's not that, then it takes me days and days, if not weeks, to get over. It just haunts me. So, but I was going there to speak about breaking through your fears and the fears of validation and fears of success and failure and insecurities and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just can't be the hypocrite. And then that day, Steve Young, who's the head of the program over at Concordia, got a couple of his students to like send me a message, please come sing. And I was like, oh, come on. He pulled out the big guns. So I went and did it, and I'm really glad I did. And it reminded me how much I love doing it, and I miss it, and that I need to stop being such a wuss. So hopefully soon, Nikki. What has been the most, book a house party. I want to do some of those. I'll come to your house and sing. I'll sing for sausage. What has been the most frightening professional leap you've ever taken? Ooh, this is good. I like that. Do you have one in your head?
No, that actually stumped me. Professional leap?
Frightening professional leap.
Professional crawl. Maybe the tour I went on.
Oh yeah, that's a good story.
My 7 months of rock stardom. Okay,
so this is interesting. Back in the early 1800s, no, this was, I don't know what it was, late 90s or early 2000s?
It was, you're talking about it was 97 is when you first addressed, or you gave me the
it was that
the CD.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I started writing songs in like 95, 96, and that was a huge turning point in my life. And then I started to sort of perceive myself as, and also have motivations and goals and focus that was all built around writing songs and producing music and doing it for myself, but also other people. And I was just, my drive had changed from drumming being my life to drumming being in support of that life. But I was still doing lots of drum gigs. I mean, for the next, whatever it was, 8 years, I'd be professional drummer, but doing that stuff on the side. So I got offered, I think it was a chance to audition, but it was sort of, somebody was already in, what was it?
The band name?
Yeah, no. The band name was Novocaine, but there was somebody in the band that had invited me, I think.
Bill Bishke.
Might have been Bill, yeah. Rest in peace, Bill.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of one of those situations where, like, if you come audition, it's likely you'll get the gig. And I was like, whoa, this is so weird. I don't want to do it. And the band was called Novocaine, but the lead singer was a guy named David Holliday, who was a French-American. Is that right?
No, he's French.
Just straight up French?
Straight up French.
Okay, and his dad was like the Elvis of France back in the day.
Yeah, Johnny Halliday. He actually just passed away, I think, last year.
Oh, wow. And David Holliday was It was weird because it was sort of late to the party grunge rock alternative. It was a little bit past when that was maybe the thing, but I remember hearing the record and going like, dude, this is really good. It was on another level, and I almost felt a little intimidated about it, but I just was like, this is not the... First of all, I've never really been drawn towards touring, slightly afraid of it, but it was more my focus. So
Actually, this wasn't the tour. This was just...
Was it just shows?
It was just the band looking for a drummer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it felt... There was something about it that felt a little bit bigger than anything I'd ever done.
Well, because they were on
described.
They were on Mercury.
Okay, that's what it was. Major label thing. Okay, the tour came later. But I just remember going, wow, and Mike, being a few years older than me and my mentor, and I was always a huge fan of your drumming and sort of had this little feeling like you downplayed your own playing. And I always was like, what are you talking about? So I'm like, Mike, do you want to do this? Like, I'd love to give him your number. What's your memory from there? Because it's very vague in my head.
You handed me the CD and gave me the
contact info,
the date, the time, and the location of the audition. And apparently you had contacted Bill, who's in the band, bass player, and told him that you weren't coming, that you were sending one of your buddies who's at the same level as you are. And so Bill was pretty laid back. I didn't know this until later because I hadn't met him yet, but he's like, yeah, okay, cool. Sounds good. And I went home, memorized the whole CD. I had these little cheater notes. And I got all the little kicks in there, all the little upbeat accents. I made sure all the nuances were there. And I drove to North Hollywood for the audition. I met Bill in the lobby of the rehearsal facility. And,
do you remember how you felt?
Oh yeah, I was pretty nervous.
Really?
I can't today's Mike would not do that. I don't know what I was thinking.
Ended up being awesome, didn't it? You were thinking something good.
Yeah, it was a cool life experience. But I remember meeting Bill in the lobby, and he just said, "Hey man, there's been a million guys come through here, and they all play like wussies. He just beat the crap out of the drums." And I play hard just naturally. I dig in.
Yeah.
I'm like on drum set, I'm more of a 2/4 guy. Like I don't nuance. I just crack 2 and 4. And I'm a huge, Stone Temple Pilots fan. So the record to me sounded like Stone Temple Pilots and Pink Floyd all in one.
Yeah, with a touch of Nirvana, maybe.
Yeah. Some of it. The worst part of the album was probably more Nirvana. So I went in there and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna beat the crap out of these drums. And
that's a good feeling when you're nervous and you get to beat something.
And so I hit hard, and all 140 pounds of me back then, a little more now. And I remember bleeding all over the drums, and I was trying to hide it.
Oh, that's rock and roll, baby.
Well, I didn't want them to think like, oh, he never drums like this. He's faking it.
He has no calluses.
It's like, oh man, I really do. I really do drum like this. I've just been writing cadences for 10 years. So yeah, I bled all over the drums, and I nailed every single one of those weird, like, there's a 3/4 bar in the middle of a tune, or there's an upbeat, and a 4 kick, like one spot in the tune. And I nailed all those little things, all the nuggets that if I were just plowing through an audition, kind of not knowing the material, that you would have missed. And I hit them all.
Isn't it cool when you find out something about yourself that you can rise to the occasion or thrive under pressure? You can go in with so much like, what if I blow it? And then you get there and there's like this little switch that turns on. It's like, no, like not today, like.
I think what really
helped. Did you
helped,
have that? Did you feel that? Do you remember feeling that?
I don't think so, because I had nothing to lose. Like, I didn't care. I was already building. It's pretty early, I would say.
But isn't that the mechanism for nailing it? Is you're so prepared that you're like, I don't care.
I guess, yeah.
I don't know. I see that a lot in MMA.
But I was thinking, I was building a world for myself in the marching arts. And,
okay. Oh, it wasn't. Your life didn't depend on this gig,
right? And actually, back then, I didn't even realize I was building this thing with the marching arts. I knew that I was heavily involved in it. I had a lot of responsibility and was teaching and writing shows, and I was doing this quirky little novelty audition thing. And
so what? After you're done with and your hands are bleeding, what?
So Bill,
does anybody notice?
Yeah, Bill is looking at me every time I would hit one of those like weird kicks. Like there's
Bill is so cool, man. He's
7-8 bar in the middle.
One of my favorite bass players, by the way, that ever lived. He looks back at you and becomes one with your kick drum.
Right.
Ugh. Anyway, so he was giving you that love.
Yeah, like he would just spin around and kind of look at me and be like, give me the nod.
He had one of the best bass faces. We say had because he passed away tragically, but he had the best bass face, man.
Dude, it's a funny story about that. I was on tour with Blue Coats. I taught Blue Coats from 2009 to 2013, and I can't remember what year he passed away. I hope I'm getting this right. I don't think it was before that. Do you remember what year he passed away?
I believe it was in the 2009-10.
So it wasn't it wasn't 06 or 07.
I don't think so. Because I remember Gannon and I reconnected at the end of 2010, and I feel like we talked about it as being something that had really recently happened, him telling me the story. But anyways, it was around that time. Yeah,
so I think I'm remembering this correctly, because if it was earlier than that, I was on tour with Vanguard, but I was on tour with Blue Coats, I believe, and I was out in the middle of a field, and I got this phone call from Eric Goodall, who was the
like road manager or something.
No, I say synth player in the band.
Oh, okay.
Eric was in the band. He was one of the.
I remember him.
The writers. Yep. But he really didn't play synth. He played B3 like 90% of the time. He had a Nord lead and a B3. It was like a super cool setup with like the actual Leslie speaker and
nice, pretty
old school approach. But he called me and said, "Hey man, Bill passed away." And I remember like literally sitting down in the middle of this giant grass field, some high school in the middle of like
a bunch of people around, or were you
Iowa? No, I was by myself, and I just sat there and like cried for an hour. It was really weird.
Wow.
It's so vivid in my head because it's such a weird place to be.
What was the feeling? Was there a lot of times you hear people talk about like a feeling of disbelief? Like, no. Or did you know it was real instantly, and did it hit you in the stomach or something? You always like, was it like a gut punch? Like, oh, what?
I don't think I've ever been that close to.
That's why I'm asking, because I've never had somebody pass away that
death.
Close.
Yeah, as far as a friend, obviously, there's great grandparents and grandparents and people that live long, fruitful lives.
Who cares about them, right?
Well, it's a
I'm kidding.
It's a different.
Yeah, you have a distant relationship
vibe,
with
to
them.
have somebody, especially Bill was like, he was pretty wild, crazy, and troubled in his youth, and damaged himself pretty good, my understanding. And then by the time I had met him, he was 180 degrees.
Yeah.
He was
clean and sober.
Yeah, clean, sober, and recognized the flaws of his ways, and it
had become pretty religious too, right?
Yeah, but it caught up to him, and I think that's the sadness I felt, is that when I heard that he had passed, I'm like, man, it was too little, too late. Like he figured out that he was not living life the way he should have been. Too late, and he couldn't undo the damage he had done
physically.
Yeah,
right?
to his body, and just.
Well, he died of a heart attack, right?
I think it was hardening of the arteries, and what led to a heart attack. I think it was just some crazy, it's just the repercussions of hard drugs.
In that moment, when you're dealing with it emotionally, and I don't know if the word is allowing yourself to break down, but you're breaking down, are you thinking about the tragedy of it? Are you thinking about, wow, he's just not here anymore? Are you replaying memories? Like what was the thing? What was the go-to?
I didn't reach out to him enough. I didn't stay.
It's regret.
I didn't stay in his life as much as I wanted. As much the way I thought about him and the way he was in my head was not reflected in my like getting off my ass to go see him.
Did that change how you are at all? Because I see you as somebody who, at the top of this, I thanked you for driving out here, but I really appreciate that about you, and I strive to be more intentional about relationships, because I think a lot of people that I know and really care about, I think there's something about the way my life functions, and maybe I just need to get my act together in terms of relationships, and that has to do with being an introvert. But long story short, I don't think I'm as intentional as I could be and should be with friendships, and I've always really appreciated that. Like I feel really valued as your friend, because you make a point to do things and even though you're really busy and you have an intense schedule, far more than mine, I feel like that's something I really appreciate about you. Was that affected by this, or is it just in that area with him, it just happened to you've lost touch a little bit and didn't spend as much time together?
I can't say that it has
is it part of it
like overtly or just directly, but perhaps it has some effect on, if there's somebody that I should go see them, or I should give that person a call.
Actually do it.
Yeah, actually do it, because that thing that you're doing is pretty unimportant. That thing that's stopping you from calling somebody up.
Or, you know what? You have a motto around that. Did it come from Seth Godin?
What's that?
There's urgent and there's important.
Oh, probably.
Explain that. I love that. It's just a cool little mechanism.
Explain it.
I guess
unpack this.
It explains. Please, the onion needs to be unonioned.
It's actually pretty simple. Urgent versus important. It's
applying it is not simple.
Well, maybe it's best. We talk about this on the road a lot, like when we're on the road with Blue Knights, in the middle of nowhere on tour, and you got a block that starts in 15 minutes, and I got to be there for the block, ensemble starting or whatever it is, and somebody will be notifying this person that, oh, by the way, we're running low on heads. We need to make a head order. It's like, okay, yeah, I got a block in 15 minutes. I'll do it later. No.
It's important.
The block is urgent. Ordering heads. Like, if you don't order heads, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that in a week or 2 weeks when you run out of heads, and because you thought that block was so important, you couldn't miss that block. Now you have no heads.
It's funny. That's almost like another version of urgent, but it's just more of a time delayed urgency.
Yeah,
but I like when you apply it to, and you've done this with just even this podcast, and we have like a little small community with the podcast that we're kind of regrowing with this new version of it. But remember you saying it's going to be hard to do it because I'm so busy, but it's important to me. And like, there's lots of things that are urgent, but I'm going to put this on the important list because I think this is something that, long term, something that we're going to want to pour into, and making time for that. Even today, I mean, it wasn't easy for you to come out here. You had a bunch of stuff going on the home front that could have been considered urgent or important, like maybe hard to distinguish, but you came out here and like made the point to do it, and it's cool. It's a good way to kind of measure things, I guess. It's another one of those little, like, taking the temperature of the moment. Is it just urgent, or is it actually something important? Can the urgent thing be put off a little bit for this more important thing? It's cool. Did you want to add to that, or can I go to the next question?
I think I completely derailed into my story about Bill from the audition, but I can wrap this up real quick.
Yeah. Sorry.
So, bam, do the audition. He says, "Great job."
You're bleeding.
I make the band. They're like, "Let's do this."
Wait,
All right.
who told you made the band?
They did.
The singer, like, was it right in the room, or did you have to wait?
I waited about an hour.
Just an hour.
Yeah,
okay, that's
I was
good.
right there.
So they were like, "It's done."
Yeah, it's done. Because I think they had experienced so many people. I was kind of at the tail end. And then, so what ended up happening is I was in the band. They were signed on Mercury, so I was getting paid for all of my time.
Were you on
cool.
retainer, or like just getting paid for everything, single thing you did?
If I showed up to a rehearsal, I got paid. And it didn't matter.
I remember
how long
hearing
the
about
rehearsal.
the money too, and being like,
It wasn't even that much money,
but it was
just cool.
compared to 70, 80, maybe $100 a gig for me at the time.
It was I might be remembering this incorrectly, but I think it was $150 per rehearsal, and that would include rehearsals that got canceled, because there are a lot of times where David would be David the singer. He would say, "Hey, my voice is jacked. Can't play today." We get paid for that because he canceled it, so we still got paid for it.
Yeah,
So
I guess at that time the difference between an $80 gig at the Sandpiper, which is where I met Bill Bischke, and a $150 just to rehearse, whoa,
Yeah, it was cool.
That's a lot. And then you were getting what?
Well,
double or three times that for gigs?
The cool thing about the rehearsals too is that it was at this place called Leeds in North Hollywood, and I never even knew these places existed, rehearsal places. I was like, and I guess it made sense to me at the time, like, oh, I guess when you watch a concert, at some point they had to practice that, right?
Yeah. They're cool places, man. But
yeah.
like full lighting rigs, like.
Well, we would be like, I remember going in there, and this will tell you the time that we were there, but like, oh yeah, and Hanson was just here, and they're on their way out. So as soon as they get out, like, you guys can get on in.
Bob, your turn.
Yeah. And then, do you remember? Oh, you know what? I guess I need to remember. I just forgot her name. Who's the one that did "I'm a Bitch"?
Meredith Brooks.
Meredith Brooks. Thank you.
Bam.
One hit wonder. Meredith Brooks. Meredith Brooks was rehearsing there when we were there. And then I remember hearing this bass line. I was in the lobby, and I heard this bass line through the walls, and I started singing along to it, and I'm like, I know this bass line. What's this bass line from? And it had like 7 bars in there, and I'm like, what is this bass line? And then I figured out, I'm like, dude, that's a Tori Amos song. And so I run up to the.
Was it Cornflake Girl? That's the one that's in 7, I think.
Yeah, I was off Under the Pink, I think.
Yeah.
Under the Pink?
Under the Cornflake
Yeah.
Girl.
And I'm like, what's going on in room 3 or whatever it is? And they're like, oh, it's Tori Amos's band. They're auditioning new drummers. I'm like, what? So I'm like listening through the door. I never actually saw anybody from the band, but I was listening through the door, and that was super cool.
That's one of my favorite records that I always forget to cite is Little Earthquakes. Her first solo record is
that's
amazing.
a great album.
Amazing. Under the Pink's great too.
And then I had
I was
going to say I had a bathroom encounter with
fun.
Frankie Valli. I peed.
Yikes.
I peed next to Frankie Valli.
Oh, I think you're going to say peed on or there's a lawsuit.
No, we just peed like in tandem, like parallel peeing.
Dude, hashtag parallel peeing
Well,
with a legend.
Funny, what was funny about it is he was actually singing as I was walking in, because he was already in there.
Oh, really?
I walked in the bathroom.
The acoustics,
And he's just singing, like he's going through some lyrics or whatever. And I'm like, just trying to be cool and not saying anything, Just
Did you
keep
know
my
at first,
head
or were you
forward.
like, hey, you got a future, Grandpa? That's
no,
awesome.
man. Just like, Grease is the word, dude.
It's a great song. So flash forward though, that initial little hookup led to you playing in front of how many people where?
Well, hang on.
Wait, just give me the stat.
I just know what I'm told, so I don't know
Well, it was
what it
roughly...
was. I heard there was 100,000 people in the middle of the Bastille.
That's awesome.
They were there to see Oasis.
You guys opened for Oasis,
We
right?
opened for Oasis, and I have my mini disc recording from side stage of Oasis. I had this little mini disc recorder, and I'm sitting on the side stage, and I'm like,
And we're talking when they were at the peak.
Right? It was July of 2000.
Rambo.
And they opened up with, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the song. Oh, well, it doesn't matter.
An Oasis song.
It was a killer tune. And I just remember, the view from side stage. You know, he puts his hand behind his back and
he has
he kind of lunges forward, sings into the mic. And I had the side view of that, and the bass player is just jamming, and it's beautiful.
That's so cool, man.
But they were complete dicks.
That's the word on the street, and you can tell by watching a little touch of an interview.
We couldn't get into our dressing room before the gig to prepare to go on because they were on the premises. So their security team superseded the security team of the venue. So my pass got me beyond the venue security.
Okay.
And my pass did not get me through their security. So I'm like, hey, I'm going on in like 5 minutes. All my stuff, my stick bags in the room, and they didn't care. They're like, nope, they are in the building.
We are
no
famous.
one's moving.
That's amazing.
Like, all right.
Typical.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, Laney Riboda. On to your question. Is it difficult to balance family and a career in music? Here's a good question.
I think
Who goes first?
Like any career,
Well,
difficult to balance family. But
what were you gonna say?
You take this one.
All right, I'll start. It can be difficult, but I know if I wasn't in a music career, then that would be difficult because I would be very unhappy, and then I'd make everybody around me unhappy. So I think all things considered, it's less difficult than if I wasn't following my passion. I'm really grateful that, early in my marriage, we got married and I was financially secure. And so in that way I was able to create a situation that really fit me personally, which was, I love a complete blend of life and career. Like I'm not a clock in, clock out guy. I'm a everything's mushed together guy. So, Andy and I were partners forever, for so many years, probably 14 years or something like that. And I always had the studio. Well, there's a point where we both had a studio at our house, but I loved having the studio at my house and I being able to just go out there any time of day. I'm always kind of passing in and out of the house. So to be able to create that kind of situation made it less difficult, and in other ways more difficult because it wasn't like I ever turned off. I think that's part of what makes it difficult, right?
That's the challenge, is that sometimes answering a simple text with sometimes just a one-word response is paramount to something that's happening 1,000 miles away. And I have to answer that text. Like when there's things going on.
And you could be at a romantic dinner with your wife.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's 11 p.m. or whatever. Like if somebody's in Kansas and they need an answer to a question in order to move forward, or I have to relay information, whatever's going on, when there's tour happening. It makes it tough. It makes it tough that you're never turned off. It's always, I think the way I've balanced it, the way I've tried to, pitch it, is that it's better for me to be sort of on call to answer texts and communicate
Dr. Mike
at all times than it is for me to go into the office 8 hours a day.
Right.
So thank God I don't have to do that. So yeah, it's like I'm around. I get to stay home. I get to take care of my little one, and I'd rather be on 100% of the time and not have to clock in at an office.
Now, here's another aspect of that, which is, I think, in order to even, and I'll say this maybe a little bit too like all the way than it is, but in my experience, you can't even entertain really having a career in music, maybe unless you're a teacher or you find a certain gig that has very clear boundaries on it, or you work at a company. But to have a career in music, I believe that your best chance is that you've turned your craft and art into a complete integrated lifestyle. It's who you are. It's how you think. Like, you talk about getting a text and needing to respond at some time. You get text messages from the great beyond called inspiration, and you have to jump on those too. You have to respond to the idea. When the idea comes, it's not like, oh, well, I'm not working right now. It's like, no, then the idea flies away. So you have to almost be on call creatively to where you can. I've set up my life that way where I've gone through great pains to make sure that I live in a situation where if, I'm relying on my ability to capture inspiration and take it somewhere, that's my livelihood. So I need to take that very seriously when I'm feeling the right thing and I can envision it happening and I can go out and be in the studio doing it. That's like been everything. Every huge moment in my career where maybe things have jumped ahead and I wrote the right song with the right person at the right time or whatever it might be. It's often been due to capturing and chasing a moment when it happened and not letting it just fly away. And that's partially just kind of the way I'm built creatively, is that things just, they come and they go and I have to capture them. And there's discipline involved too. Like, I definitely, especially in those days, was constantly writing and recording things, but making it a lifestyle really does affect your ability, your family and your relationships. And I'm always back in the day, pre-iPhone, I was carrying around a tape recorder everywhere I went. It was like keys, wallet, tape recorder, so that I could just, even if it was like Christmas, I could duck away into the car and like put down an idea or, whatever it might be. And that, what it makes you is maybe somewhere else a lot. And that can be, that's maybe the biggest toll it takes on a relationship, is that it's almost like there's an invisible second wife or something, which is your art, and part of your head can be there, I think. And so being present can be a challenge, especially when you're really in a period of being really busy or being really kind of tuned into your creativity. But it's absolutely manageable. And I think you have to pick a person who accepts you for who you are, even if they don't love that, or it gets in the way sometimes. They have to appreciate that you're nothing without it. So they need to know what they're getting into, because if you try to pry that piece of an artist away from them, I mean, there may be times when it needs to be done short term, but if you really try to put boundaries on something like the lifestyle of an artist, I think you're in for the building of resentment and a long-term explosion that may come later. That's what I think, because it's a part of who we are. It's one of the things we do. We eat, sleep, we drink fluids, and we make stuff. If you take one of those out, you start to atrophy as a person. You become even less of a valuable part of the relationship, I think. What do you think about that?
I think that's very well said. I think period.
Okay. So I think I saw one other one come in. We'll answer that. All right. You want to check Twitter? Let's check the Twitter.
While I'm checking the Twitter, I will throw in some other tidbits on this gig thing and how it all ended.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off.
No. Actually, it's kind of funny because how we even ended up in Europe for 7 months touring.
Yeah.
There was over a year hiatus. So the Novocaine band, we did some local gigs. I think the biggest thing we did is we opened up for what's the band? I Just Want to Fly. Put Your Arms Around Me, Baby. Sugar Ray.
Sugar Ray.
Sugar Ray. We opened up for Sugar Ray at a Lake Tahoe snowboarding festival.
Oh, I remember you telling me about this.
Yeah, I played in
super cold.
Oh, yeah, I was so pissed. My grudges got wet, and
it sounded like you said your grudges got wet.
No, my grudges.
Gretch drums.
Yeah, I the stage was set up facing like the snowboard jump.
Oh,
and it started snowing, but it was snowing like horizontally
at you
into the stage.
A rain covered sideways.
So as the snow is hitting the stage, the lights are melting. So it's basically raining on my gretches, and I have this vivid memory. Like, this is terrible like performance. Like, I was not in the zone. I was playing, and I'm just looking at my drums, going,
My wood. Yeah, they were lacquered.
Yeah, but it's funny. So anyway, that was like the biggest gig we played in the States, and then David just says, "Hey, I'm moving back to Paris later." And so the band was just null and void.
Sounds like something a rich dude does.
Yeah. Well, he's a race car driver, and he also does like French voice-over acting for. He was doing Disney movies. Like if you watch certain Disney
Pepe Le Pew.
Well, if you watch certain Disney animated features in French, if you select the French, it's
you might get
a
him.
lot of them are him. Yeah. Or at least one that I know of. I know
his voice is awesome, man. It's somewhere between Sting and Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, he's awesome. But he bailed for like a year and a half, and then out of nowhere, I just thought, oh, that's cool. I got to play in a cool band, got paid for rehearsals, jamming. A year and a half goes by, he calls and says, hey, I recorded this French album. It's all in French. And it did surprisingly well, and we're going to tour it. You want to play drums? I say, yeah, sign me up. So the way this ties into the marching arts is he called me in September, and the tour was in January. So that year, this was
0102?
No, this is the year. This is going into 2000. So this is September of '99 is when he called me.
That's right, because the Oasis gig was with his solo thing.
Yeah, right. So I had to write and stage all my indoor shows
on tour
from September to January. So it's the first time in my life where I finished a show in January. So it can be done. And actually both groups medaled that year at WGI Finals. So that was kind of cool.
See, so go get a French artist gig.
Yeah.
All you show designers.
But yeah, then I bailed in January, and I was able to come back home. It's not like I was, sequestered for 7 months. I was going back and forth. But
I wish you would have gotten to play on that record. You did do some recording with him.
I did a recording of a obviously live version, but I did record one song with him. I don't think they ever released it though.
That record had was influential on me for that year. I remember.
It was way better than Novocaine.
Yeah, it was super well written, Beatles influenced, just good, timeless singer-songwriter stuff, and it sounded like sonically it was really good. I remember when you brought it over and you're like, that Novocaine thing has become this, and I put it on my speakers and I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I remember that song, Pour toi.
Yeah.
And what was cool about it is hearing songs that were in a style that I liked. I'd never heard this before. And the vibe of the vocals and everything, but it was in French, but it didn't sound so overtly French as to be maybe awkward to my American ear. And I loved it because I couldn't understand a thing he was saying, and it brought out, it's almost like when you listen to some great Radiohead stuff where he's deliberately not really enunciating and it takes you to some other place that's like nonverbal. And I don't know if I told you this, but because I loved that record so much and I loved what it felt like to not understand the words yet feel possibly what they meant. I ended up writing and recording the song where I tried to create my own language, and
Sorry.
so I wrote all the lyrics.
Okay.
And then I took every word and chopped it into syllables and then just switched them by syllable. And then I would do anything phonetically that I needed to do to make it singable. So love became velo.
Okay.
And so
I gotta hear this.
The song was called Protect the Beauty. And so that was tech pro the, like I would even turn the into he the, and then te beau would be beauty.
Interesting.
And the whole thing, it ends up sounding slightly French, but sort of, it's a strange combination, but it was fun because it was like, oh, this is like a decoder ring. Like I can give a song to somebody and say, and like, wink, wink, just switch the word, you know?
Right.
And it's hard to kind of figure out, especially because I'm sort of taking some artistic license. But anyways, just
that
side
album,
note.
by the way, is excuse the pronunciation, but it's paradis un enfer. So
David Halliday, right?
Halliday, yeah, and
like Halllayday.
Halllayday.
Oh,
I think Halliday. Yeah.
Okay. Look it up, and especially that song "Pour toi," right, or something that means "for you," doesn't it?
Yeah. But super cool stuff. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention this, but David is a drummer, so he plays drums on all his albums.
That's right.
Yeah, so I think there may be a few albums he didn't play on, but he plays his own drums.
Yeah,
and then that's why he asked me if I wanted to do the tour. Obviously, he didn't want to play drums on his own tour.
And that was probably pretty cool. Like, he liked me.
Yeah.
He wasn't just stuck with
He
me.
liked me once.
At one point.
Yeah, I remember I was too, sometimes I was too articulate for him. Like,
he wanted you to slop it up.
yeah, which basically,
Remember us talking about that.
it was actually pretty cool. Like, because at first I was really resistant. I was like, I don't want to play like that. But
yeah, you're making me worse.
But looking back on it, I'm super thankful for that.
You learn the value of that type of on purpose looseness.
Well, because actually, when you and I have talked about this before, not on the podcast, but
A lot.
like when Nirvana came out, when that whole thing came out, like we hated it, and
It's embarrassing.
yeah, and I look back now, I'm like, how did I hate it? Like it's so awesome, you know. Like Dave Grohl is like one of my favorite drummers. I just didn't. I wasn't in the right space. I was in my. You and I were going to watch Mike Stern and John Patitucci at the Baked Potato, and
With Weckel.
we were just like we were in a different place. Like we were listening to Simon Phillips, and
we always had an appreciation for groove drummers, but I think as stupid as it sounds, this is how myopic you can be when you're young and full of whatever, piss and vinegar, and have super strong opinions, and either things suck or they're amazing or whatever. I just remember when I heard the beat, which back then I used to call the beat of the street.
Beat of the Street, yeah.
Because it was like me and my friend Trent, who we grew up drumming together, and there was this guy Troy who lived on our street who played drums, and he had the hugest drum kit with all, like his toms were concert toms with big old pieces of Kleenex on them. And his thing was, and that was the beat of the street. And we all learned it, and then we grew up a couple years and went like, oh, that beat's stupid, you know? And so then he's
so
playing
overt.
the beat, and I'm just like, that's a stupid, dumb beat.
I was the same way. When I heard all that stuff, I was like, oh.
Not appreciating that his feel is amazing, and that it's obviously
And it's funny. It's like
whatever.
I especially love.
We thought it was maturity, but it was immaturity.
Yeah, I especially love the second album.
Is that In Vitro or something?
In utero. Anyway, so
is that El Caliente,
Yeah.
El Ticho?
you know what's funny is like I've gone back and listened to some of the Dave Grohl stuff before he was in Nirvana, and I'm spacing on the name of the band, but they're kind of popular punk-ish band. He was way more like what you and I would appreciate with that project.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
Like very articulate and very, he was very appropriate with where he would put stuff, like drummer stuff.
Yeah, there's a
He never overplayed, but he did it in a way that was more in line with like probably where you and I were at. And then like the way he played in Nirvana was, I don't want to say it was acting, but it was pretty kind of a departure from how he used to play before he got into that.
Maybe
band.
on purpose, more caveman.
Yeah.
But you could tell there's a control there. Like I go to the detail. I've been like pulling up Smells Like Teen Spirit as like a songwriting study because it's such an amazingly crafted song that has a lot of layers to it. And even just on the chorus, he hits a crash cymbal at the top of every bar, and every one of them is like the tiniest bit late, to the point where you're like, that's not a guy who sucks, or he's going boom, and it's like,
yeah,
he had total control of what he was doing.
Yeah,
even if it sounded.
Well, and it's funny because like just a few years later, you listen to something like Monkey Wrench, and it's just like, it's just like right there. It's just in the pocket.
Was that him on that, or did Taylor play on that?
No, Taylor played on the tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Monkey Wrench that
no,
one? Oh,
Monkey Wrench is don't in on in on.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's just super tight and articulate and
so
but yeah, it's like it's he's always had that in him. Because you listen to that old punk stuff he was doing, and it's sharp.
Yeah, and then when you hear him on the Queens of Stone Age record, it's even a little step further.
Yeah.
In terms of the virtuosity aspect. Side note, Gannon and my friend Drew worked with on Taylor Hawkins' record. He has who's the drummer of the Foo Fighters side project called Taylor Hawkins and the Coattail Riders, and Grohl came in to their little funny small studio in Burbank and played drums on a song. And they said, first of all, he did one take, buried the click the entire time, and they went in and the drums were basically ruined. He hit so hard that all the heads were like gone, but the take was amazing, and he just hammers, and it was pretty awesome to hear that story. We have a couple more questions we should hit real quick before we go. About 5 have come in. Carl the drum tech, what's up, man? Did you see me exchange with him?
I did not.
I invited him on the show at some point. The podcast.
Oh yeah, Carl. Okay.
Carl.
When you said Carl, I pictured the letter C.
Oh,
and that's
right.
a different human.
You're picturing Carl's Jr.?
Yeah. So Carl with a K.
Yeah. What's up, Carl? So I get the impression you guys read books. If I'm correct, name a few faves. Smiley face.
I remembered another joke Jim Wunderlich and I used to laugh at. It's Airheads. I think Adam Sandler, right?
Yeah.
And like they break into a studio and they demand like 30 copies of Moby Dick. And the cop goes, "The movie or the book?" And he says, "They made a book out of that?"
That's perfect.
Kills me.
Books. Right. You know what? Not only do I read them, I've written one. Good books. I would say Cat in the Hat is high on the list. Anything by Shel Silverstein, Where the Sidewalk Ends. What is it? Light in the Attic.
I was going to say The Giving Tree.
The Giving Tree is amazing. Yes. I actually read that recently.
I've cried reading The Giving Tree.
Really?
I actually have, yeah. At some point.
I had a moment recently with it. That was my favorite book when I was 4 or something. It's written on there. My mom said, Adam's favorite book at 4 years old, 5 years old, whatever it was. And you know,
you were already emotional.
Sorry, I had a touch of the melancholy. Book it's amazing. But anyways, I assume you're talking about real books. I would say a couple of my favorite books are by C.S. Lewis. So like The Four Loves is an amazing book. Talks about the love of, more in biblical terms, like the love between friends, the love between family members, eros, which is like the love between you and a loved one, so more romantic love, and then agape, which is like the love between you and God. And all those different loves function in different ways and are complete paradigms of love, and it's split up, and that book talks about it in an amazing way. So I love that, and I love Mere Christianity is another one that really helped bolster and clarify my own belief system. That, you know, when you grow up, I grew up as a believer and a Christian, and just there's a certain point where you pass into your late teens and early 20s where you start to go like, well, is this just a thing that was bestowed on me? Like, what do I really think, you know? And you start to kind of venture out mentally, and that book really made me go like, yes, this is what I believe. And he's answering questions that I'd always had, and articulating it in such a way that felt like the depth of it superseded the depth of my own kind of intellectual issues, and just really brought it together. And then since then, I think Jordan Peterson has done that to an even greater degree, especially because there's such a treasure trove of him speaking about religion relative to psychology, and making sense of those two things, which has really been amazing for me, because that's it's what I write about the most, is sort of the tension between emotion, thought, and spirituality, and like what that crazy triangle can do to your thoughts about reality, and where meaning is found in life, and what negative emotion, how that functions. And funnily enough, I watch and listen to so much of Jordan Peterson's work. I haven't gotten into his new book, but I would imagine that book will make the list once I get into it. I need to get the audiobook.
I bought the book. I haven't read it yet.
You have the hard copy?
I do have the hard copy. For some reason, I like hard copies.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a used, beat up hard copy than a new paperback.
So what are your top topics?
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to conveniently follow up your C.S. Lewis with some Sam Harris books.
There you go.
You know, you got the yin and the yang over here.
There's some balance.
No, I'm in the middle of the moral landscape right now. And I need a few more plane flights to finish that one. That's when I read the most. And actually, there's a book I loaned to you. Where is it?
It's called Lying.
It's called Lying.
And I've totally read it 4 times. That's Lying.
I want to read it.
I haven't read it yet.
I'd like it back because I want to read it again.
It's a little guy.
It's a tiny little book, and I just loved it. Even if there's some things in there that maybe, you know, you have issue with, I think just exploring the thought of lying, and that we do these little lies all the time we don't even realize we're doing.
Yeah, I read the first few pages, and that was immediately what he jumped on.
And I want my kids to read it, so give it back.
I will. And I know exactly where it is, and it's safe.
Okay, good. Anyway, I'd recommend that book, and I literally read it in a day. It's super small. I just zipped right through it while I was at a layover, and had a couple-hour flight, and just zoomed right through it. But
and his take on it, just from the few pages that I read, really connects to our earlier conversation about truth and authenticity and high resolution creativity, because I think it's lying. Whenever you're kind of like petering out and taking the easy way out, it's a weird kind of lie that you're telling yourself, or that you're telling people through your work. If you think of it that way, like, I'm just not gonna lie. I'm not gonna do anything that's for the purpose of manipulating my audience or whatever. It's
even in the little editing that we do when we say things like, this is not a huge deal, but it's an interesting challenge to never lie. When you say, oh yeah, 4:00, when you know it was 4:06,
yeah,
or 3:58, you know.
There's lying by omission. There's lying by slight exaggeration or slight downplay, or all those things are lying, but just degrees.
In some things, it's an interesting challenge to how do I simplify this in bite-sized pieces where they don't need to know details. Like I'm going to clutter up the story with insignificant details. How do you do that without lying? And that's the more I think the thing that was intriguing to me about the book is, and another book I want to throw out there is one we've talked about before is the War of Art.
Oh, great book!
Little play on the art of war.
I experienced that as a audiobook, which I highly recommend. The audio talent is really great. Sounds like the uncle you never had or something talking to you, and I just love. That was a great one, man. That's
a super quick read. I think I read it in 2 days.
Yeah, it's a 2.5 hour audiobook too.
The War of Art. That's
a great one. And then Start With Why is another great book that I've dipped into, but have learned about all the concepts. It's Simon Sinek. He has a TED Talk that really summarizes the book in an amazing way. It's like see the TED Talk and maybe skip the book. Oh, that's weird to say, but anyway, it's great. Start With Why. All right, there's some books for you.
Yeah,
fancy book learning.
We got to get Carl over here.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Sure. If you guys don't know who Carl is, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, his handle is @CarlDrumTech.
Yeah, I think he's got a pretty big YouTube following or Instagram following, but he's like one of these guys that's just like you can't shake him. He's super wholesome,
very low energy,
and
high energy.
Carries that tenor pad around everywhere. But he's always just got something really wholesome, positive, and productive. Philanthropic, I guess, to offer to the marching arts community, and he addresses a lot of real situations that kids are in nowadays. Like I have a high stress audition coming up, and how do I get ready for that? And he'll have these little techniques and
helpful hints.
Yeah. Anyway, I reached out to him probably more than a year ago, I think, and said, "Hey, man, I really like what you're doing. There's not enough of this. Not enough philanthropy with the marching arts, and there's a ton of kids that do it. It's a niche activity, but it's just nice to see that most of the stuff we see online is like, oh, they're dirty. Oh, they sound like a high school bass line, and it's nice to see someone that's not falling into that god awful pit of YouTube comments.
Right. Yeah. He's rising above it with lots of positivity.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool.
Okay, cool. Here's another question. Let's see. From @J.Bizarre. J Bizarre. What helped you form your style of writing music? And that's for both Mike and Adam. Do you have something?
Yeah.
Queued up and ready to go?
Yeah. I think when you can put something out in the ether that takes its own shape and form, other than what's actually written on the paper, to me that's the goal with everything. That's the attempt, is that it's some like musical organism that isn't, we talked about this a little bit last time, but that isn't rhythmic in nature, as far as like, I'm not looking for you to feel a certain rhythm. I want you to feel a texture, like what does flannel feel like? And what does, what does nylon feel like? What does satin feel like? What does wool feel like? It's those things that are highly complex on a micro level. But when you zoom out, you're just getting like tapestry, you're getting fabric. And I was drawn to that because I felt, as a kid, listening to a lot of the Ralph Hardiman stuff, And then much later, Jim Casella has that approach. Maybe, I don't want to say what approach Jim Casella has, but he has that effect on me when I listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very textural, and I feel like that the notes, the rhythms that are written down on the paper isn't what I'm hearing. And
it's the closest approximation
written
on paper of what you're hearing.
Well, no, they're just components. I guess it's if you want to get into like orchestral arrangements, orchestration, and you can think about a lot of. I'm thinking of Daphnis et Chloe by Ravel, and just thinking about all those textures and tapestries of sound that you're hearing. But if you were to look at, just one violin part, and you look at that rhythm, it means nothing. It means nothing by itself.
So the sum is
right. So I've always been drawn to how can you do that with a battery with not sounding like a complete train wreck.
Right.
I think that's the style, is like how do you weave textures in and out of each other while also serving the full product. Like you can't just alienate the brass book or the wind score.
And is that through partially like a desire to break ground and not tread on old trammeled?
I think it's simpler than that. I think it's just like,
well, I mean, if you were to write something that sounded like it's been done before, would something in you cringe a little and go like, I need to push harder than that?
It's less about me being conscious of whether it's been done before. It's more about me just not liking it. Like it's like a beat of the street.
It's a taste
like
thing.
Right. I'm not going to write that. So I'm not going to write the marching equivalent of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And not because I'm deliberately trying to stay away from it. It's just because I just don't like it.
So what forms, I would relate to that. What helped you form your style was going after what you relate to.
Right. And I'm doing that thing again where I want to make sure I'm not misunderstood. When I say I don't like it, I mean I don't like creating it. It doesn't mean that's not a judgment on somebody else doing it or somebody else's work. It's just in the context of just, I don't like it. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, it's a shirt you wouldn't wear, but you're not mad at somebody else who wears it.
Exactly.
And I think what helped me form whatever style I have in writing music it's pretty similar. And then my goals and intentions with music is, what I've noticed is that I have the same goals and intentions with the visual art I've created, or writing my book, or writing. I've done some, fiction writing, just like screenplays and things like that, and it's about. I'm always interested in sort of transcending the form itself to get to something that's beyond expectations, or that doesn't feel like it's easy to categorize. So I want to use the tools of timelessness to sort of set up an avenue for the gut level feelings and emotions to come through. So I want there to be, like, it's almost like there's a bit of a recipe for when I feel like I'm writing a song has this potential to encompass all of this. This is what a song is capable of doing as far as expressing the human experience. And I want to fill up that entire barrel if I can with every song. So like there's it's a little bit of a recipe, and I want something that rhythmically supports the intent. I want something that harmonically supports the intent. I want to give you something to think about. I want to give you something to feel about. I want this song to be just as good today as it might be in 10 years. So therefore, I'm not willing to use tools that might be the trendy ones. Like I want to get in touch with that which is just sort of above style. maybe. And in that, you end up with, it's not like, that sounds like I'm trying to be like groundbreaking or something. It's more than I'm just trying to not make anything get in the way of what matters the most to me, which is just getting something across through music. And music there's so many stylistic, genre specific things that can take you out of a song, like you can hear a song, go like, oh, that's that type of song, I'll turn it off. And I think I've tried to internalize maybe my influences to the point where I'm not conscious of when I'm accessing them. I'm just sort of trying to take everything that's been subconsciously absorbed and what I've learned and what I love and use that to just get my experience out into music. And that I think ends up sounding a certain way. And I try to allow that to develop. Like there was a period going from, my Murder Yesterday record, which is a period of being meticulous and extremely accurate with everything. And that felt like the way I needed to express those things. And then I believe Life on Earth came next, and that was a real departure from as much of a meticulous attention to detail with technicalities and I guess extreme high resolution in certain areas. On Life on Earth, to me, I wanted to be a little bit more expressionistic and use abstract, and for me that meant like using effects and reverbs and a sense of space in a new way. Whereas most of Murder Yesterday it's very dry and very in your face and articulate, and Life on Earth gets into territories of sort of invoking a space. And then Way Out was the next record, even though Fallborn came out in between. It had been recorded earlier, but Way Out was sort of me.
Sgt. Pepper's.
I don't know. That's high praise. Thanks, man. But my Sgt. Pepper's, which is more of just like a Sergeant Salt. What?
Private Peppers.
It was Way Out was highly influenced by watching the documentary Glass on Philip Glass and just sort of digging into like turning off any preconceived notions about what's good and what's not, and just allowing myself to build on things. That's I discovered in that album a part of myself that was, I feel like I always have this little thing running, which is like, does this matter? Is it worth it? Am I, I gotta make sure matters. Does it matter? Does it matter? And representing that through a certain type of developing motif type of writing ended up expressing that part of me, which I hadn't really before. It's like, here's the motor that's always running. Like, I want to try to get better as a person. I want to do things of meaning. I don't want to waste time, all that stuff. And that ended up representing itself through musical, like when you hear the song, the title track of that record, Way Out, it's this one arpeggio that just keeps repeating in one phrase, way out at the top of the world, at the edge of the edge of the edge. And it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And that feels like when I listen to that record, I go, yeah, this is how it kind of feels to be me, for better or for worse. It's just this droning on of thinking and feeling and trying to develop it into something more. And that song, that album has fewer songs that feel, I guess, maybe like a traditional song would feel. And they just sort of, they're experiments that go and then stop. Anyway, so that's sort of my thing. I feel there's a good feeling I get when I kind of check all these little boxes, when there's something for me as a drummer that feels like it supports the thing over here. And
there's a rabbit hole we could get into, probably be way too long, but
I know.
You mentioned about not deliberately steering away from things that might be trends or might give away when the song was conceived. And it's ironic that drums are the dead giveaway. Drums can ruin a song based on when they were recorded or what trends were trying to be adhered to. I can think of like a bunch of songs off the top of my head. They're like, oh, it's too bad the drums are recorded that way.
Yep.
Because that song would be timeless. And you think about songs that have stood the test of time.
And synths,
most most of them that I can think of just right now, off the top of my head, and this is all subjective, of course, they don't have drums in them.
Oh, interesting.
And it's like it could have been recorded yesterday, like Landslide, Stevie Nicks, 1974, I believe. I could have told you that was recorded yesterday.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons for that too. Like I think sonically,
I'm remembering that song with no drums, so I hope there's no drums in that.
I don't think there is. It may be percussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, songs that are kind of spare too and broken down and more about acoustic guitar and vocal or piano and vocal. In the 70s, we hit a point in recording where is some sort of awesome pinnacle where that things were recorded and it sounds amazing, and we still strive to reach some of those same heights with regards to organic sounds. And especially when they remaster a record that was made in the 70s.
I never thought about that. Like, yeah, especially like early 70s on, depending on the instrumentation and your knowledge of the song, if you're completely ignorant of the artist and the song and I played that for you, you might not know when it was recorded.
Yeah, as long as you volume match. That's one of the big things is just back then you can't fit as much low end on vinyl that you can on a CD or MP3 or WAV file or whatever. So if it's just kind of, it's there. When they remaster a record, they boost some low end and they make it as loud as a modern record, and then it stands up or sometimes transcends. It's just slight side note to this. I went on a little Rush binge, the other day, and I was just sort of like reminiscing and, listening to Moving Pictures, Permanent Wave, Signals, and then moving to, the later 80s stuff and early 90s stuff. And side by side, it's objective that one sounds more impactful.
Dude, that Moving Pictures album is near perfection.
It just sounds great.
Oh my God.
And then they all got super big, or Alex Lifeson got like just a huge rig of digital gear, and the guitar sounds got more complex and space age, but they actually got like smaller and more of a time. And now those records didn't age as well. And you just put them on just side by side, and one sounds literally just like smaller than the other, even though from one perspective, the perceived size is bigger. Like they're using more reverbs and it was more lush and layered, but it's the law of diminishing returns. It's like they were sort of shrinking their sound by trying to make it more grandiose. Right. But a lot of it was just more digital technology, more obsession with technology.
I think Limelight with headphones in a quiet room is one of my favorite experiences. Like you can just hear everything. You can hear the dust on the drum head.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Not only that, you're hearing even more than everything because it's on analog tape. So you're hearing like that extra layer of harmonics that I often miss in those later records when they didn't really know what they were missing. I think they were hearing more clarity and more pizzazz, and I can't believe I used to use the word pizzazz, but it's easy to just get. I think that happened with what's that style of music that Skrillex helped launch?
Yeah, that style.
Dubstep? Is that what this is called? Whatever was a when that stuff hit, it was like people freaked out, and then a year later you heard it and you're like, oh, that's so last year. Like,
yeah,
it was so impressive and so technologically based that its shelf life ended up being really short. So I think navigating that line, I call it the jeans and t-shirt. Like I want to find at any given time what the jeans and t-shirt of that time is. When, like if you wore jeans and t-shirt in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, and your hair was cool, you had short hair or something, you weren't having regrets. But if you were like in the 80s wearing Z Cavaricis and like had a bunch of jelly bracelets on, and you were like up on the trends, it just doesn't age well. It doesn't mean it doesn't have value though, but I just think for me, I'd rather kind of gravitate to those things that are going to be more lasting across every metric, like lyrically, melodically, sonically, instrument choice, as much as possible. That's what's important to me. Anyways, next question. We better hurry up. I just don't want to leave anybody out. Let's see here. At HWD Punisher for Mike. This one's for Mike. Let's do like the rapid questions round with these last ones. What made you decide that your writing style right now is what you'd use consistently throughout the writing for your shows, both in BK and BCP? And how did you approach it differently than the writers of other groups? There it is, in case you need to reference it, because that's a long question.
What made you decide that your writing style right now is what you use consistently throughout? I don't know what he means by right now.
I think basically maybe he's saying like there's a connectivity in BK in Blue Nights and Broken City that's very much you, and you're not afraid of letting there be continuity between that because it is you. Like you don't wear a different hat.
I think that would happen with anyone who is not trying to.
We kind of already answered this in a lot of ways.
Like if you're deliberately trying to serve the music, this sounds so weird. I don't even know how to say this without sounding weird, but if you're deliberately trying to serve the music, it's almost a missed opportunity for your thumbprint. Like you don't want to serve the music to the point where there's no identity in what you're offering.
Oh, that is weird. I wasn't expecting something weird.
That's weird because.
So you're saying that you don't want to disappear into it. You actually want to appear within it and say something.
And this is the really weird thing about this activity is because there's so many people involved. And you say, well, it's about the group effort. It's about the macro, and you got the brass guy, you got the pick guy, you got the battery guy, you got the color guard, you got the drill, you got all that stuff, and we all have to work towards the good of the whole, the good of the product, and all of that's true. However, we can't discount that each one of those captions, each one of those elements is a human being that is living a life that only gets one life. You don't get a second go around. And it's got to mean more than, oh yeah, I served the song. It's like, no, my life is more important than that. So my DNA, my thumbprint is going to be on that song, even to the point of possibly maybe I did something that might be counterintuitive to what you think would service the song. But it's me. And if somebody else had written it, it would sound different. They would serve the song in a different way.
Can I speak to that really quick? Because I think
sure.
That opened up a really interesting subject, which is, I think in life we have all these opportunities to either do what's sort of expected and traditional or step into the role of being the unique person that you are. So let's say, you're the best man at your friend's wedding and you have to do that dreaded speech. It's like, do you go up and phone it in because people just want to hear the classic, like, he means so much to me and I'm so glad they're together and cheers, Or do you go up there and bring you to it, that moment, and make it your own? That's what people really want. But it's a scary step to take. And I think that when you play a role within something, you don't have to just hide in the role. People want you to step out in those roles creatively, I think, and be like, I think about really quick, the best session drummers, two people come to mind that are kind of old school, but session drumming is a little bit of the thing of the past. Or I think of Manu Katché and Jeff Porcaro, two people who always served the song, but always brought something of themselves. And that's what people wanted. So that's why, and Vinny Colaiuta, these session guys that like
Well, yeah.
brought that extra thing of theirs.
Right. We've used the word chameleon before, like almost as a compliment. Like, well, he's such a chameleon. He can do anything at any time and for any purpose, and he just kind of fits right in. I think maybe the older I get, the more I realize that like that's not good.
Yeah, you want to be some strangely colored lizard.
Yeah,
that stays your color.
If you're a chameleon, I mean, what does that say? It just means like, what's the real you, and when do we get to hear that?
And what colors are you adopting? That means you're on some level copying or lying or phoning it in or trying to follow in somebody else's footsteps and be derivative.
I just thought of Matt Chamberlain, who I hate to speak anything that could be perceived as a criticism of him, because I love his work.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one of those guys that I have this longing to hear more, but I don't know which one he's going to do.
Which one what?
Exactly. Like, think about the stuff that Matt Chamberlain's played on, and it's like, which one's him?
Oh.
Is it, because I hope it's the Fiona Apple Matt Chamberlain, because that guy, I want to hear everything he's done. I want to hear him do that Matt Chamberlain thing.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like he does that on everything that he plays. I feel like he's a chameleon and he's kind of all over the place.
True. But I do think there is a Matt Chamberlain, and maybe he's sometimes allowed to be it, and sometimes he's actually produced out of it or something. But
sure.
It's
not a criticism. It's just I'm trying to
I agree.
paint a picture.
You got to make a living. Like, I've definitely had to be a chameleon a lot in my career, and then also put my foot down and be like, I'm not going to be chameleon over here and whatever. But with Matt Chamberlain, I think often when he's a chameleon yet still stands out, it's because there's something magical about his feel. He could play something that on paper could have been any drummer.
Like the Wallflowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
one headlight, if you guys know, one headlight. That's Matt Chamberlain.
His drumming on Under the Pink, Tori Amos. His drumming on Edie Brickell, New Bohemians, Ghost of a Dog record is unbelievable. It's so musical and so relaxed and so he's able to bring a sense of phrasing to just pop drumming that there's an elegance to it and a snap. There's something about his traditional grip backbeat that just places in a spot that's just right.
Like when you said Jeff Porcaro and Bernard Purdy, I mean, you could just, those guys have like a thing.
Yeah.
And then Matt Chamberlain has like everything. So it's...
Yeah, and he's of a different generation.
I can't even put it into words, what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm saying is that don't try to fit in so much that you undo yourself.
Yeah.
Because your value in what you're creating, it's the time spent on it, and you can't get that time back. You got to make it worth it. And the way you make it worth it is by leaving that mark, by being true. And
not being anonymous, not disappearing into it.
Don't be anonymous. I love that. All right.
Okay. Do you still just wear boots, and why? How does someone pick their perfect pair? At Lisa X Spice.
Lisa would say that.
Yes, I do. And why? Because I think boots are the jeans of the footwear. If you get a good pair of boots, the trends could change and your boots remain. So that's my reason. How do you pick the perfect pair? You don't want them to look too shiny. You want to pick a good quality leather. And I don't like dealing with laces, so I'm down. I like a zipper side boot. You zip it down, you take it off, you put it on, you zip it up.
How old are those boots?
Probably 2 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They look older, right?
No, they just look like the same ones you've been wearing for 10 years.
Honestly, I would just I'd have a uniform. Probably be like a Broken City shirt, some the jeans I love, which are barbell jeans. They're like normal jeans, but they're actually a little stretchy, so they're comfy. And some boots, and I could just have like 10 of those and just wear it every day. I don't care anymore. What am I? I'm old now. Okay. Specifically, Albert Avery. What's up, dude? specifically for marching, where do you see the activity going? Props are getting bigger and becoming necessary for shows. Do you think it's possible for an ensemble to win with a painted floor and no props? How much are finances going to hold groups back? Whew. There's a lot.
All right, let me hit all these real quick.
Where do you see the activity going?
Well, these are all related. All right, this is a big one. Where I see the activity going, how about can I switch it to where would I love and absolutely like just, I would fall in love with the activity if it went this direction. I would love to see ensembles, full drum corps, indoor lines, high school lines, you name it, that we're all writing our own material. And I think at that point, we don't have to shy away from that word art so much, because even though I say it a lot, I cringe a little bit every time I say it, because like art, yeah, it's art to me, but I still there's something inside me that goes, ugh. So
what pretense of the word art, or what?
Yeah, I think a little bit of that, but also the fact that 99% of the stuff out there, I pulled that number out of my butt, is a version of something that's already out there. So what would this activity look like if all of the capable ensembles were writing their own stuff? So everything you hear is something that they created for that particular show. Now, that might not be a reality for a lot of groups, but I would love to see that. That's where I see the activity going. I think it
probably is a reality. It just might not be as low a hanging fruit or something.
Right.
But
I would love to see it go that way, and I would like to believe that that's where it's going. And it might take, decades, but hey, let's do it.
And I've been beating that same drum in my world, because I feel like in the world of producing, engineering music, and writing songs, the more we use plug-in presets and drum samples that anybody can buy, that's a little bit like the equivalent of pulling from somebody else's core content or material and repurposing it that you don't know.
That can be really cool, by the way. So it's not a criticism of that approach, because I think that is kind of clever when you can take something and unpack it and make it your own.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's an art to that. Just like Frank Sinatra wasn't a songwriter. He was a interpreter. Right. A vocal interpreter. Right. So there's definitely validity to it. But I do think that when you do kind of put some limits on yourself, like, there's nothing, and all the something that is going to come from these people that we know, the people in this room or the people within our circle, I think inevitably people will make creative decisions that are rooted in their attachment, because I think you're more attached to music that you've created and that you know where it came from, and it came from nowhere, as opposed to looking outward and cherry picking it. It's a little bit more of an external process of, okay, what are we going to do with that? Let's have a meeting, let's talk, let's brainstorm. Okay, cool, this would be good. And you're starting off on a foot of standing on the shoulders of somebody else's work, and the end result is different. Better, worse, doesn't matter. But I think you would probably end up with maybe more, who knows what results. You might end up with the plain floor and no props more readily if you had designed and written a show from the ground up that happened to be so minimalistic that that's what you wanted. I don't know. There's something about starting from nothing and having to make the everything yourself or within your group that I think just leads to a different end result that's inevitably more surprising. I don't know.
What was the second?
Oh, the second part of that question? Props are getting bigger. We kind of...
Oh, yeah. So how about Ayala a couple years ago? I can't remember exactly what year or what the name of the show was, but they had no props. In fact, they played the same, or pretty close to the same piece of music twice and interpreted it differently visually, front to back. I thought it was a super creative show, pretty clever. I think there's room for that. I wouldn't say that a group can't be successful without props.
How much are finances going to hold groups back?
I think where we're going to see outdoor, where we're going to see the outdoor in quotations, like drum corps. It ends up in indoor at the end of the season at Lucas Oil, but I think where you're going to see the biggest spread between the haves and the have-nots are the sound system. The fact that trying to push all that sound up to the top of the stadium acoustically is just not possible at the type of presence that we're expecting at the top of the stands, that the fans are expecting, is not possible acoustically. So you're going to see, I think, a big divide happen in the type of sound gear that we're bringing out. Less to do with props, more about sound gear. What was the next question?
Luckily, that stuff's getting more and more affordable and better for the price, I guess, too.
Yeah,
technology.
Hopefully, yeah.
That was the end of it. But there was an addition.
Okay.
He replied to his own question because he had more things to add. And I like this. It seems a little bit aimed towards the beyond marching arts too. And for the other side, is it possible for someone to produce and write music successfully in the industry without having expensive equipment? How much does equipment affect the final product? Well, the good news is that we've reached a point now where the digital technology, especially for modeling the things that used to be insanely expensive, whether it's one of the examples that always comes to my mind is there's a compressor called the Fairchild, and old compressor, I think famous for being used in the 60s. It was invented for broadcast audio to just kind of level dynamically the audio, and the components were so amazing and people loved it on recordings. So anyways, this if you wanted to go out and buy a compressor that was made back then, a Fairchild, it would be 30, 40 grand now. And it's one channel, couple knobs and a switch or two, like not even that much control. It's just, it does a thing that's magic. And a bunch of different manufacturers have accurately modeled that piece of gear. My favorite is the Puig Child. That's why he calls it the Puig Child, because it's the Fairchild, but Jack Joseph Puig made it, so he threw his name in there. And so there is, if you know what you're doing and you're using your ears, you can get really great results without a ton of money. But I believe that it takes a lot of discipline. To get the results that really transcend, you have to, I think, use those tools in a very responsible way and not fall victim to sort of like I said, just presets and stock drum sounds and these things that are so easy to do. It's easy to get a product that sounds professional on some level, but whenever you do that, whenever you use like a predetermined process, which is what a preset can be. A preset can be a good learning tool and sometimes can work, but in general, to really go through the steps it takes to really learn what an EQ does, what a compressor does, what each knob, how it affects the emotion of the sound, and to actually know how to use it and to take the time to maybe make your own samples and all this stuff, you end up with just more tools at your disposal to create what you're creating. So if somebody else is using all presets and all store-bought samples and just throwing them up there, but they wrote a great song, they're missing out on the opportunity to write the great song, but also express themselves artistically with regards to every choice and every plug-in and every drum sound and every guitar sound, and every bass sound. Like, when you add all those choices, you get a more complex and original, authentic final result. And when you remove them, you're just making it harder for you to stand out and do something unique. So yes, you can, there's a lot of gear out there. It's just use it wisely. And I think that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
This has been awesome. Thanks for checking it out. Thanks for listening, getting back on board or on board for the first time. Good night and good morning.